for 30 plus years. I've seen every type of child grow up.
It's always a delight to just talk about how we leave a legacy for generations to come.
Don't let emotions win. Let truth win.
It's been able to change into a time of my life that I am grateful for.
You moms and dads are wired with everything you need to be a parent to a great kid. Welcome again to Parenting Great Kids. This is episode 5, Happier Parents Have Happy Kids. I'm your host, Dr. Meg Meeker, and parents, I want you to know something. I know today that many of you moms and dads out there, no matter how old your kids are afraid of something. You're afraid you're going to fail. You're afraid your child's going to go in the wrong direction. You're afraid your child's not going to get into the right college or get a good job. Stop being afraid today. Stop being afraid. Parent out of strength, not fear. I'm here to help you. That's why I do podcasts for parents, not to the kids, because you can truly have an amazing legacy. I'm really excited about this episode. It's one of those look in the mirror kind of things you do, and you have to have the courage to do it and to be honest about it. You can transform your home and your life with your kids. And the reason this episode is called Happier Parents Have Happy Kids is because the emphasis is on you. And many years ago, I found out a secret, and that was if I really wanted to do something good for kids, I had to help their parents. Because if I help mom and dad be happy, guess who else was happy? The kids. If you're happy, mom and dad, it affects your kids. If you're a force of joy, they're happier. If you're moody and down, it affects them. If you're struggling with depression, your kids are going to feel it. But like so many things in life, you're a breath away from an amazing change. You don't feel like it, but you are. Also, in this episode, I'm going to be talking with a really important guest named Darcy Britten. Darcy's a friend of mine, and she's a really courageous mom. Darcy suffered 2 bouts of bad depression. The first one after her 3rd baby, a boy, was born, and the second bout of depression after a son whom she'd given up for adoption when she was in college at 19 came to find her when he turned 18. But guess what? All of that changed. She got help for her depression. You're going to be so inspired by her and how she overcame her depression. Like I always do, I'm going to give you 3 practical points to ponder, ready for action the very moment we close the episode. Also, don't just listen or download individual episodes. Actually, click the subscribe button right next to the title of this podcast. Tell your family and friends the same. I appreciate it. But more importantly, it helps you because when you subscribe, these episodes automatically go into your show feed. But before I give you this episode's points to ponder, I want you to listen in on my conversation with my special guest and friend, Darcy Britten. If you want to know what it means to overcome as a parent and start winning today, then this conversation is going to be a real gift to you. My guest right now is my dear friend, Darcy Britten. Darcy, thanks so much for coming on and being willing to talk about something that you and I both know something about, and that's depression.
Yes, you're welcome, Meg. Anything for you.
Oh, bless your heart. Darcy is a counselor. Darcy is a mom to 7 kids. She has extraordinary amount of energy, and she has struggled with some depression. Can you tell us a little bit about your family structure, Darcy? Just so our listeners get to know you a little bit.
Okay, our family structure today is we have 7 children. The first 5 are biological, and the last 2 children are adopted from China.
Amazingly adorable kids. All of them.
Yeah. And then the oldest one is also a bit special because he is my birth son, and so he came into our lives 10 years ago.
Okay.
So, yes, big family in lots of great ways.
Yes, and you're just a very, very, very fun family. Well, you know, I've watched a lot of your kids grow up, and you had told me at one point you struggled with a couple bouts of depression. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I think you're a counselor, and you know this too. And it's a hard thing to get through to parents, but it's so important. That's why we need to talk about it, is that when a parent is struggling with depression or anxiety or stress, the kids wear it. And you have a whole lot of kids, and you went through a couple bouts of depression. And so I would love to hear you talk about the worst bout of depression that you struggled with. When did that come about?
The worst bout, and I can really identify probably 2 times, but the first bout was when I was a younger mom, and I had 3 children under the age of 8. So I had our 2 daughters and my son was just born. And that's probably one of the top most difficult times of my life.
Why do you think that was? Any idea?
Why it was so difficult?
Yeah.
I think, Meg, it was the cliche of a perfect storm. I had just had a baby. My husband and I were getting ready to move, and my own family was not happy with that move. We were starting a new business, and finances were unclear and tough. I think I was very hormonal. And you throw in a woman like me who's pretty sensitive, and I got hit.
Tell our listeners what it feels like to be living in a depressed person's mind and body. What does it feel like?
I would say for me, the depression exhibited more in an anxious form.
Okay.
So insomnia, nervousness, racing thoughts, not being able to get off a thought, scary, weird thoughts like, oh my gosh, why did I think of that? And then because of all that, I became very, very exhausted. And that's when the tears came flowing.
Did you withdraw from your husband or your kids or your friends? How did you respond?
Well, I didn't withdraw from my husband. He was working around the clock at that time of our life. And so it was very difficult for him because he was going to work, but he was leaving me that wasn't in the best shape. The children were young, and I covered pretty well. But it was very clear to me that having a mom who's teary and sleepless was going to be felt by them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, how long did that first bout of depression last?
I would say a nice solid 6 months.
A nice solid 6 months. A bad solid 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
A nice solid 6 months. And then I began to find some ways to heal again.
Okay. And then it was a number of years later that you found yourself in the same situation emotionally. Tell us about that.
That situation, I think, really was quite situational. It was a little more recent. It was 10 years ago, which I guess isn't so recent now. But that one was more of a sadness. And that was actually, although on my left hand, I couldn't believe the miracle of having a reunion with my birth son, and I was joyful on the left hand, it was confusing because I was also very sad on the right hand. And that time, I did feel much more textbook depression, where it truly felt like there was a dark cloud on top of me, and I couldn't get away from it.
Did it come on pretty suddenly?
It came on a little more gradually because I don't think I recognized it right away with all the emotion of this miracle that was happening in my life. I think the crying started coming. And then one time I just remember sitting in a chair in our bedroom and going, oh no, it's time to get help now.
So did you seek your son out, or did he seek you out? How did that all come about?
Well, he was turning 21, and I knew that. And my husband always knew about my son. And I was just getting ready to send our oldest daughter off to college, and I had made a decision with my husband that we really wanted her to know the whole story. And she was leaving the home, and I wanted her to know all of her mother, not just, I wanted her to know all of me. She was getting ready to be an adult, and I wanted to be much more genuine. As we were getting ready to go through this process of looking for my son, he was in Virginia doing the same thing. He knew he was turning 21, and he went to the adoption agency that I worked with when I was at Virginia Tech all those years ago, and they remembered me, and they had a file. They said, we know where your birth mother is, and we'll give her a call.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I had always kept in very good contact with them. Whenever I moved, I wrote letters on his birthday, knowing that he would never receive them. But
okay, because this was a closed adoption. I mean, this wasn't open like today.
Yes, it was closed. Oh, yes.
So he comes back into your life, and you start to find yourself emotionally twisted and upside down. And did you feel like you were grieving? Did you feel like your life was over? What did it feel like when you sat on your bed and just cried and cried and cried?
Oh, what a big question. It felt, I think I would pick your word that you just used so beautifully, twisted. Mm-hmm. It felt very twisted up because I think it was sadness that really maybe never got done. I was so out of control, basically, and then pushed on and married and had kids and finished my graduate degree, and I didn't really give myself a lot of chance to be sad. Right. And I think I did it 21 years later.
Yeah, which is an excellent point. I think a lot of mothers do that, and I think a lot of men do that. When you have a deep sadness, or you know that there could be a deep sadness there, our response is usually just run away, just keep busy. And I think a lot of parents are doing that now, Darcy.
Yeah.
I think there's so much stress and anxiety, but it chases you, and it's just going to be there. Do you feel like your kids knew what was going on?
I do feel like they knew what was going on this most recent time.
How did you help your kids?
The first thing I did was get professional help myself.
Great.
Knowing that even though I really didn't want to because it was painful, I remember going into the elevator up to the therapist's office going, oh, I don't want to do this. Right. But then I think, you're going to do this for the family. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. It was a very confusing time. It was a very open time. So lots of communication between my daughters and I, understanding that all emotions were okay. Being happy and being scared, and I got to walk in a miracle.
Yeah. But at the time, I imagine you were thinking, where is this going to take us?
I would say that what it was a little fight between intellectual knowledge and emotional knowledge. So intellectually, I knew that everything was going to be okay. I had great kids. We had faith. And I had all that knowledge that everything was going to be okay, but it felt scary.
Did you entertain or did you take antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication?
I did take the first time I took an antidepressant at that time. Yes.
Did it help?
Yes.
What helped you the most in getting out of that depression?
I knew that I would need to do something before I actually felt like doing anything. And I do think over the years I've learned that when you do something different, you begin to think something different. And so I did a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, challenging thoughts in my head. And I really worked very hard.
It is hard.
Yes.
It's gritty. It's grueling. You have to deal with emotions and you have to deal with your intellect. You and I know that at the root of depression is profound self-hatred and self-blame and guilt. Did you ever come to a point where you said, Darcy, you need to forgive yourself?
Yes, that is probably integral to the fact that I gave my baby up for adoption. So the blame lifted when I thought about things very intellectually, and the blame also lifted because my birth son was such a lovely, wonderful person that the love that he and I grew together, it healed it.
So I think that through that hardship, it made you and your family probably closer. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. It's also been useful as the generations are going forward. Now my daughters are having children, and because the discussion is out there now, it's helpful.
Well, that's what we have to do. We have to remove the stigma for anxiety and depression that so many mothers feel and so many fathers feel. And they just want to hide it because they say, well, it's mine. I'll deal with it. Pull myself up by my bootstraps. Medication and counseling is for wimps. You know what? It is not, because it's a real disease and it grabs you and it pulls you down under. And when you go down under, guess who else does? Your kids do. Darcy, we're running out of time, but I want you to talk to the mom or dad out there right now who's struggling with depression. What do you want to say to them? Not just as a depression survivor, but as a therapist.
Having anxiety and having depression is a gift. And the reason I believe that is that those of us who have a propensity toward anxiety and depression, we have a lot in common. We're usually very sensitive. We feel. If you turn us up a little too high, anxiety kicks in. And if you turn us a little too low, then the tears start to flow.
Yeah.
So I just want people to know that who have anxiety and depression, that you're not crazy,
Right.
that you have this gift of this very, very strong and beautiful personality with a lot of stuff going on. And I guess lastly, I would say that I really do believe that to do something different causes us to think something different. So ask yourself, what can I do? What's the smallest thing I can do that might make a difference for me?
And encouraging our listeners out there, if they're struggling with something that they constantly blame themselves for, face yourself and ask for forgiveness for yourself. I mean, it sounds kind of like a crazy thing to do, but it's so freeing.
Yeah,
it's so freeing. Forgiving ourselves removes shame, it removes blame, and that's where freedom really begins.
It really does. And it's a hard thing to do.
But you know what? You are one tough lady. Darcy, thank you so much for being with me. And I just really, because, your story gives hope to so many people because, you've got a great, great, great life. And we can overcome the worst of depression, anxiety. Doesn't have to run us. Or our kids.
No, I 100% agree.
Great.
I couldn't agree more, Meg.
Great. Thanks, Darcy.
Okay, bye, Meg.
Parents, I have a question. Are you as happy as you once were? If not, why not? Is it being a parent? Let me ask you this. With each passing year that you're a parent, does your happiness get a little tougher? We have to look into this. You know why? Because your kids are looking at you and your moods. I want to share 3 points to ponder about happiness and moods as a parent. I'm talking to you, not your children. Number 1, do not be afraid to see how your moods could be affecting your child. This is tough. I know it's hard because when we look at ourselves, we look in a mirror, and when we want to be the best parents we can be, looking at ourselves and seeing our frailties is a very painful thing to do because we realize that our moods could be affecting the most important job we do. But I want to tell you something, and you'll hear me say this repeatedly throughout our podcast. Do not parent out of fear. You parent out of strength. Don't be afraid to look inside and see what you see. If you struggle with depression, if you struggle with anxiety, or maybe you have in the past, it's very important for you to get some help. Not just for you, but for your kids, because guess what? If you live with chronic anxiety, you're parenting differently. Your kids feel it. You're saying things differently. You're worrying about many things. You're worrying about way too many things. And fear is really a ruse, isn't it? Fear is a ruse. It isn't real. We always worry about things we cannot control, that we can't do anything about, and fear never changes any outcome. But nevertheless, many of us have it. I know depression. I have been through bouts of depression. I have tremendous respect for the illness. And I also know this, and this is very painful to say, my depression had an effect on my kids. Do you know why? Because when you're a depressed parent, you're not available fully for your kids. When you're a depressed parent, you're not 100% available to your kids. That is not meant to put the blame game on. Depression is an illness. It's like having a pancreatic problem, like having a broken leg, like having chronic heart disease or having migraine headaches. It's something that moves into your body that you live with. It's medical, it's clinical. The brain is an organ, and you need to treat it that way because when you're depressed, you're not available for your kids. When you're living with chronic anxiety, your kids are mopping up that anxiety. So one of the very best things that you can do for your kids, rather than sign them up for another sport, find them another tutor, buy them another pair of shoes or a nice outfit, or move into a better home, help yourself get happier. Because I guarantee you, when mom and dad are happy, the kids are happy. Number 2, anxiety and stress are really common among today's parents, particularly young parents. I'll tell you the truth, when I was parenting, I did not feel the anxiety and stress that the millennial parents have. And that is because you have so much competition for your time with your kids. You've got iPhones and iPads and television and internet and programs and teachers and coaches, all competing for your time with your children. And every time you give those people or those things your children, you're taking away time from yourself. And there are a lot of choices. And I have never seen a generation of parents more afraid and wound up and anxious. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, because you got to stop that. So I want you to start to deal with your anxiety and your stress and minimize it. Cut it out. Write down on a piece of paper what's really bugging you and start journaling about it. Cut out any stress that you can in your life. Number 3, chronic sadness and depression are bad for your health. Did you know that chronic depression can lead to dementia? Chronic anxiety and chronic sadness has an effect on your memory. It has an effect on your heart. It has an effect on your adrenal glands. May cause your life to be shorter. There's no reason for you to continue to live with chronic sadness and chronic depression. Get help. Want to know where to start? Go to your internist. Go get a checkup. Talk to that doctor. Look at that doctor in the face and say, listen, I think I may have some anxiety. I think I may have some sadness. I think I may have some chronic depression here. What can I do? And a good internist will look at you and they'll talk to you about maybe medication. I don't know. They'll talk to you about a good counselor. They'll talk to you about a good support group. Listen to me. We in the medical field can treat successfully anxiety and depression. So it's high time for you, if you're struggling with any of these, to get help for those mood-altering issues and illnesses, not just for yourself, but for your kids. If you really want your kids to be happy, parents, I don't care whether your kids are 2 or 12 or 22 or 50. If you want your kids, sons and daughters, to be happier people, get happier yourself. There's no excuse for a midlife crisis, no excuse to go off and buy a red Porsche that goes 100 miles an hour down any country road, no excuse to have an affair. I'm talking about true happiness. Start, look, go to your doctor, go to your pastor, go to a good friend. You can have it today. One change is a breath away, and it will absolutely alter your life. You can do this. All right, let's get social. I want to hear from you and interact with you. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Go to megmeekermd.com and click on the links. You can send me a question on Facebook or email it to me at askmeg@megmeekermd.com. Again, it's askmeg@megmeekermd.com. This question comes from Lacey on Facebook, and her question is, will I be a bad mom? Lacey, the mere fact that you're asking me if you're going to be a good mom or a bad mom lets me know that you're well on your way to being a great mom. Here's why. Being a great mom starts with an acute awareness of who you are in your child's life. What effect do you have on your child? What's your responsibility? How are you going to parent your child? Great parenting is about understanding your gifts, understanding your child as well as you can. And over the years, your child's character and personality unfolds before you, and it's so beautiful to watch. But great parenting is about giving your child attention and time and affection and admiration when it's warranted. It's also about disciplining your child well. Why do you discipline? To be mean? Absolutely not. You discipline your child because you know that when you have self-control, you can be successful at almost anything. Relationships, job, parent, anything. But I am sensing, Lacey, that you're asking this question because you had a bad experience as a child. Maybe you didn't see a good mom modeled before you. If that is the case, you are going to be creating a mom model almost in a vacuum because you have not seen what a good mom looks like. Well, let me tell you, first of all, this is very important. You need to take a little bit of time for yourself to look back. You need to look and see, how was I hurt by my mother? What mistakes did my mother make? How did it feel when my mom left me all alone for 3 days? Whatever it was. And I'll tell you why you need to do that. Because you need to resolve the mom hurts that you have. Because if you don't, they will rear their heads in your parenting yourself. And I see this over and over and over because unhealthy, hurtful patterns continue on into our adult lives unless we break them. So you need to break that, because if you don't change old patterns that you've seen and lived with, i.e. your mother's habits, you will act them out subconsciously. You see, we do what we know, not what we want. So look back. Face the mistakes that your mother made, not as a blame game, not to call her a bad mom, but just to deal with reality. Figure those out, resolve those hurts, and then as you move forward with your own children, forge a new way. If your mother used to yell at you, for instance, resolve how it felt and hurt to be yelled at. Then you move into your own parenting and make a pact with yourself that you're not going to yell at your kids. If your mom left you alone all the time and it hurt, face that hurt and say, I'm not going to leave my own children alone like my mother did. You see, you can't change what you don't know. You can't change patterns that were hurtful unless you acknowledge them, you face them, you resolve them, and you change them in the future. Let me tell you, Lacey, hang in there with me on these podcasts, and I will do everything in my power to help you be the best mom that you can be. As always, keep sending in your questions at askmeg@megmeekermd.com. Again, that's askmeg@megmeekermd.com, and I'll try my best to answer them. Hey parents, there's something I have to tell you about. The Strong Parent Project. This is an online program I created because I wanted to go deeper with you. I wrote a program under that umbrella called 12 Principles of Raising Great Kids. I mentioned one of the principles on this topic about you being happier in order for your kids to be happier. You know, all the time we say, I want my kids to be happy, but guess what? We forget about one of the things that makes them happiest, and that's our happiness. Raising great kids requires a plan. I wrote you one, 12 Principles of Raising Great Kids. This is a plan that works. Family meetings, expert videos, interviews that I do with people, even refrigerator notes that you can post on your refrigerator to keep the content fresh and front and center while you parent your kids. You can join today. Go to megmeekermd.com and click on the Strong Parent Project. Every parent in America believes that their child's happiness comes from several places. Being really good at sports, getting good grades, having the right friends, being in the right school, having a nicer home. But we miss one of the most important factors in our children's happiness. What is that? Us, parents. If we're miserable, we'll pass it on to our kids. Our children walk around like little sponges next to us. So if we're feeling down or we're worried or we're upset and angry or depressed or anxious, guess who wears those feelings? Our kids. Don't pass this stuff on to your kids, and don't let your kids absorb your feelings. No matter who you are, what your issues are, listen to me, you can feel happier than you are right now. You can get rid of a lot of the stress in your life. You don't have to live with that nagging anxiety or feeling like you've got a gray paper bag over your head all of the time. Today is the day to begin to end all of these. If you don't do it for yourself, at least get happier for your kids. And remember these points to ponder. Number 1, without guilt, take a hard look at how your moods affect your child. 2, if anxiety or stress interrupt your life, get help. And 3, life is short. Face your feelings and overcome the bad ones. So parents, until next time, remember, great kids are raised, not born.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Parenting Great Kids. You can like Dr. Meg on Facebook and follow her on Twitter at Meg Meeker. Just as a reminder, for a parenting plan that works, go to megmeekermd.com and click on the Strong Parent Project. Thank you for listening, and remember to share the podcast, write us a review, and click subscribe.